Hello, I'm Mystic Orange and this is video hashtag 599. In this video, I'll be reviewing 16 Season 1 Episode 14. It's called Clonesy and this episode is about Jonesy, working at Khaki Barn. So, I do think I like that title. It's very clever. But before we get into the review, make sure to like, share, subscribe. And make sure to check out my previous videos. I've recently been making YouTube shorts out of the monster from New Scooby and Scrappy Doo show. Anyway, since you're all caught up, let's get into talking about this episode. In the first scene of this episode, we start off with Jude. He attempts to do skateboarding down the escalator. That's his usual. In the next part of the scene, we're at the Lemon. In this episode, we find out that Jonesy is a Taurus. This is the second time we find out a zodiac sign of these characters. Because remember, in the previous episodes, we find out that Nikki is a Pisces. So this would mean that Josie's birthday is around April and May. And I imagine these characters are in the same age and they go in the same year of the school. So from the information that I know, this would mean that Nikki is older than Jonesy. Because her birthday will be around February and March. So anyway, Jonesy is looking for a new job. What's new about that? Jen tried to offer Jonesy a spot at the penalty box. However, Jonesy refuses. I mean, thank God, this is reminding me one of the worst episodes in the show. It's where he works at the penalty box. Thankfully, it's not happening in this episode. Anyway, break is over and everyone is off to their work. And this time, Nikki tried to offer Jonesy a spot at the Khaki Barn. So anyway, Jonesy accepts Nikki's offer and plans to work with Nikki. They exchange awkward small talk. And then Jude comes in. Nikki goes off to work. And then Jonesy and Jude gossip with each other. And then Jude brings up sweater folding machine. I mean, that sounds like a cool invention. Anyway, Jonesy tries to hint at Jude that he thinks that Nikki likes him. And then Jonesy tries to bring up some examples. The first example is that Jonesy talks about when Jonesy and Nikki went to the movies, and he thinks that Nikki tried to sit on his lap. But Jude tried to say that, he took her seats, so that's why she did it. But this makes me think, it makes me recall a situation. The last time we seen Nikki and Jonesy hang out together in the movies was a couple of episodes before, when Jen tried to have a fake date. And then Jonesy and Nikki were arguing about this movie, Pick the Thong Guy or something. I'm sure Jonesy is talking about that. Also in the same episode, when Nikki and Jonesy were trapped in the elevator, there were some hints where Jonesy and Nikki, are having googly eyes with each other. So the spark of the relationship was happening earlier than we thought. However, this is the episode where we're starting off the possible relationship. Which I do have mixed feeling towards because, I don't have positive feelings towards this relationship. In fact, I have so many problems with this relationship, actually. However, I don't have a lot of opinion about this relationship at this point, at this episode. But I do think it gets worse further down the line. And I don't feel like I ever tried caring about this relationship when it happened. But this relationship does remind me of other sitcoms where they would have the main characters date each other. Like, for example, in Victorious, Jade and Beck would, date each other, and that would be their like main focus throughout the show. And it's interesting when I bring up Jade and Beck because I kind of compare them two with Nikki and Josie in terms of personality. They kind of match. Like Jade and Nikki are both, tough personalities, and Jade and Jonesy and Beck, they're both like ladies, man. They attract the ladies. And that's not the only show. In France, we already have like two pairings. We have Rachel and Ross, and we also have Monica and Chandler. So, in sitcoms, we do get to see main characters ending up with each other. Even in iCarly, there's a love triangle between like Freddie, Carly, and Sam. So that's happening in there as well. I do find this interesting. How about you guys? Anyway, Josie's second example was like there was one time where Nikki tried to pay for Josie's order, but that could just be a simple friend thing. Josie is probably like someone who doesn't pay for your things, so Nikki probably helped. Anyone else would have done the same thing. Like Wyatt could have done that as well. So anyway, Jude wants to know what the problem is. But he kind of guesses that like Jonesy is into Nikki, and yeah, I guess Jonesy spills the beans that he kind of likes Nikki, and so then Nikki and Jonesy's relationship blossoms right here. While Jonesy and Jude, talk about this, and Jonesy kind of reveals himself. Caitlin kind of like hears this, and immediately she doesn't react well to this. I did find her reaction funny though; it was so sudden. So she addresses this information to Jen and Wyatt. They raise the issue what might happen if Nikki and Jonesy started dating. I mean, we've seen this happen in like sitcoms, like in Victorious when Jade and Beck break up, or in Friends when Ross and Rachel break up. So Caitlin and Jen's feelings here, is valid here. Like watching back Friends, I know what happened when like Ross and Rachel broke up. It caused some like friction between the group. And the gang had to, pick sides with who they should hang out with, and it wasn't pretty. I remember one moment where like Phoebe tried to, mediate with the two characters. It was a whole mess, so I can understand Caitlin's and Jan's frustration here. So anyway, Caitlin and Jen try to stop, Nikki and Josie, inevitably, going together. They made this plan without Wyatt. And that part I can understand, like, why they need to leave out Wyatt here. Because, Nikki would be suspicious if they made up a lie and, Wyatt was with them. So Caitlin and Jen lied to Nikki about like Jonesy, bringing up about babysitting his youngest brother. However, in this scene, they make an error. I think. I think Jan refers to the youngest brother as Marshall, but we know that's not his real name. His real name is Robbie. So anyway, Caitlin says, and Jan, if Jonesy brings up this topic up, make sure to change the subject completely. So ideally, this should prevent Nikki having further conversations with Jonesy. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, because eventually Nikki will, have a conversation with Jonesy. So anyway, in the next scene, Jonesy and Nikki start working together. And Nikki shows Jonesy the ropes of working at Cocky Barn. And knowing Josie, he slacks off, and then he goes off to put on some music. It's Dog Toy, one of Nikki's favorite bands. I mean, we have had this mentioned in the previous episode. So anyway, Josie was about to ask Nikki a question. And then Nikki gets clued up on this and quickly declines Josie's question before even, asking her. I think this is to do with what Caitlin and Jen said to her earlier. You know, the lie they brought up with her. So I'm guessing what Nikki thought is that Jonesy was going to ask Nikki, to babysit his younger brother. And maybe that's why I guess, Nikki declined Jonesy. And to Jonesy, this felt like a knife to the stomach because I think in Jonesy's head, he thought Nikki knew what he was going to ask her. He thought, he's going to ask her out, but, and Nikki, quickly declined. So, it's kind of harsh on his end. So to him, it's like a rejection. In the next part of the scene, we have Josie flirting with the clones. And to Nikki, this seems like the worst thing ever. In Nikki's eyes, it's probably she's asking who would want to date the clones. So the clones ask, what three things would they bring to a deserted island? And if I had to answer this question, first of all, why would you want to be in a deserted island? And if I was ended up in a deserted island, there wouldn't be any technology and I would hate to be there. Also, it could be really hot or really cold. You're next to water, so like there's possible tidal waves. There's a lot of disasters that would happen in a deserted island, so I would not want to be there. So anything that gets me off the island will be great. I was gonna say maybe a boat, but I don't like boats. I could just have a plane, and someone fly me off the deserted island and bring me back home. The other thing will be like as device that gets me, contacted with someone to get me there. So like maybe a phone that works, with cell service and doesn't run out of batteries. And last thing to bring to a deserted island is probably something for survival, like food or like weapon or some ointments like medicine. And Nikki kind of responds to Chloe's question by saying like she knows three things she would banish to a deserted island. And obviously she's talking about the clones. Anyway, in the next scene, I did fast forward a bit to the lemon. I did want to skip over like less important things in this episode, like Jude's skating thing. Anyway, Nikki runs towards Wyatt about Jonesy, and Wyatt and Caitlin kind of get clued up on that. Like, Nikki is kind of like, is into Jonesy. And because of that, they can't let this happen. And I had to be really honest, I really don't care about Jude's subplot in this episode. It doesn't impact the whole episode, and it feels redundant. So do you blame me if I want to skip over it? Anyway, we're at Stickett. Jen comes over with Jude. He got the aches and pains from, doing his stunts. So anyway, Jen offers Jude like a heat cream or something. It's like a muscle relaxer, so it should help, Jude relieve the pain. So you only need to use a dime amount of it. It's really concentrated. And it's also banned in Europe. And Jen makes a bad decision in leaving Jude with this heat cream alone. Jude, he's not gonna listen to Jen like this. I swear, leaving Jude alone is like leaving a toddler alone. So Jude, by not listening to Jen, he squeezes the entire tube into his body. So anyway, Nikki and Jonesy go out for lunch together. Nikki hates the idea of Jonesy hanging out with the clones. I mean, that's understandable because Nikki hates the clones. So anyway, Nikki and Jonesy go for a burrito together. And Nikki isn't quite fond of this. I think it's kind of understandable that Jonesy might be into burritos because burritos are kind of like Mexican cuisine, and I don't know. Jonesy is Latino, so I don't know. Maybe that's why he likes burritos a lot. He also likes tacos, which is also Mexican. Anyway, Nikki shouldn't start complaining about Jonesy hanging out with clones and her hanging out with Jonesy because she wanted this. Like she wanted to hang out with Jonesy, and look, you're complaining all throughout. Anyway, Jonesy drips burrito all over Nikki's top, and he tries to clean it up. But when Jen comes over, it makes it seem like Nikki and Jonesy are kissing each other. So Jen speed dials Kaylin to come over really quick. Fast forward in future scenes, we're at the amusement park where Nikki and Jonesy are dating with each other and they ride the vomit comet. Anyway, Jonesy is totally scared of riding the vomit comet. This reminds me of two scenes that happened in 16. Well, for one thing, this reminds me of that episode where Jonesy is trying to get a job at That's the Beep, and he lied in his resume about doing some sky jumping, and he is totally scared of heights. And this also reminds me of that sushi episode where, he took a ride with Wyatt to check up on Caitlin's date. Anyway, moving forward in the next scene again, Nikki and Jonesy buy tickets to a movie, and it's a rom-com. I find this bit really funny. It's where Wyatt, Caitlin, and Jen, try to interrupt Jonesy and Nikki's moment in the movie. So, they bring their, food. Like, Wyatt brings, a drink, Caitlin brings a popcorn, and Jen brings some licorice. I did like this scene, it did make me laugh. Anyways, in the next scene, Caitlin, Wyatt, and Jan continue to bother Nikki and Jonesy. And Jan notices that the sticker is empty. Where the hell is Jude? And she notices that the muscle heat cream is completely empty. If Jude used the entire tube, that means he's in trouble. Anyway, in the next scene, we have Jude, having a pickle. None of his body part is, working. So he drags himself around with a skateboard throughout the mall. He then bumps into Stanley, this annoying kid, who seems to be all alone. Anyway, I did get some, facts about Stanley. Apparently, he is 6 years old. Why is a 6-year-old doing all alone in the mall? I swear his parents need to be in jail. Because this is kind of negligence. Also, he doesn't seem like a 6 years old. I know he behaves like a 6 years old because he does hang out with his mother. He is treated like a 6-year-old, and there was this particular episode where it was him and his two other friends, were babysat by Jonesy, and he was a total nightmare. I couldn't stand this kid. I still don't like. He's a brat. Oh, but he also doesn't seem like a 6 years old. He seems like a 9 or 10, at least visually looking. He's not that short for a 6 years old. And I assume he's around Robbie's age, or maybe younger. Jonesy's little brother. Also, I feel like 6 years old aren't that independent, and Stanley seems like a little bit more independent for a kid. Imagine like if you're 6 years old, you'd be like pawning out for your parents. And about the 9 out of 10, you're more likely to be like left in your own devices and going out and stuff. I think that's more likely. Anyway, since Jude bumps into Stanley, Jude does a terrible decision by trusting Stanley. Like, why would you trust this midget? Like, he tells Stanley, like, can he look for Jen for him? And obviously, Stanley's not gonna listen to Jude. He's a brat. And obviously, Stanley doesn't care about Jude's life. So, he's like, oh, how much do you got? As in, like, how much money Jude has in order for Stanley to save Jude's life. And Jude tells Stanley, like, there's a fiver in his back pocket with his name on it, and he can have it. So Stanley is all delighted, and he takes the money from his back pocket. Also, could you imagine being a 16 years old like Jude, all alone, and you're bumping into a 6 years old like Stanley, and you're telling this kid to grab money from your back pocket. So basically, this 6 years old was like stroking Jude's bottom. Because I imagine, grabbing a money out of someone's back pocket while they're still wearing their trousers is kind of like an iffy scene. Out of context, that would be a questionable request. And you also have to bear in mind, like, Stanley is still a kid. He's not going to fully follow Jude's instructions. And guess what? He didn't. With this money, he straight away went to the arcades and, he got into some game. So basically, he didn't even ask for Jan to come by. So not only did Jude let a 6-year-old stroke his bottom, he also got robbed with his money. Eventually, Jude does manage to get to the gang. And everyone tries helping Jude up. And I guess Jonesy and Nikki call it quits for tonight. Next time they ever go dating again, I guess it's best to lock them in a closet somewhere. So back in the lemon, Jen gives Jude some instruction to help, help the cream wear off. So basically, Jude has to drink plenty of water and help his body move forward. It should take 8 hours or less for the cream to wear off. And obviously he can't move on his own, he's going to need assistance. So Nikki and Jonesy help Jude, walk off his, cream thing. And at the end of the episode, Jude is all better now. And for that, he treats everyone with a kebab. However, these aren't just normal kebabs. Jude has put something interesting in it. I mean, Jude never reveals what he put in it, but we can suspect that he put the heat cream inside the kebabs. He basically put chemicals inside the kebabs and made his friend eat it. For what reason and why did he do this? If this wasn't a cartoon, these characters would be put in a hospital. Did they think this was funny? I did not think this was funny. Jude was literally affected by this heat cream thing. Why did he think this was a good idea to give his friends this? Anyway, the episode kind of ends at that point. Kind of disappointing way to end the episode. However, I'm not done talking yet. We never get revealed how Jonesy, lost this job. Like, he did work with Nikki at the khaki bond, but we never find out if Jonesy gets fired. He probably did. I kind of read the wiki page about this episode to find out how Jonesy got fired, and there are possible theories. Well, there are only two theories exactly. Well, one of them I don't agree with. The first theory is that they possibly fired Jonesy for taking an extended lunch break. That I don't think I agree with. If they fired Jonesy for taking extended lunch break, they should also fire Nikki as well, but they haven't. Also, Nikki made a statement in this episode that contradicts that argument. She says that Jonesy has a lot to learn about Kakibon, implying that the clones aren't smart enough and they let the employees, take extended lunch breaks. I mean, they work with Nikki, and she probably takes multiple breaks in this job. So if they had to fire Jonesy, they would have fired Nikki as well. And if you had to give any reason for Jonesy getting fired, you'd also have to imply it with Nikki as well. Because it's possible, like, whatever Jonesy has done in Kakibon, Nikki possibly did as well. And that's not just taking extended lunch breaks. This is also like behavior they make in the job. Things like slacking off or not doing their job properly. So if Jonesy got fired for those reasons, Nikki would also get fired for those reasons. So therefore, I don't think the clones fired Jonesy for those reasons. The second theory is that this was a temporary employment. So Jonesy probably had it for a short while. That I kind of agree with more. What do you guys think? How do you think Jonesy got fired? Anyway, that's it for this episode. Let me know what you thought about this episode down below in the comments. It's time to share my favorite things and my least favorite things about this episode. Well, my favorite thing about this episode is definitely when Caitlin, Wyatt, and Jen, interrupted Nikki and Jonesy's moment in the movies. I thought that moment was funny. My least favorite thing about this episode is definitely Drew's subplot. I have to be real, I didn't care about Drew's subplot about him skateboarding. Like, it didn't make much impact on me. The moments in this episode where I felt like, I wanted to skip because I wanted to focus on the more important things. And I feel like Drew's moment in this episode wasn't really important for me to know about. I also didn't like how this episode ended either. Did they think this was a funny way to end this episode? Because I didn't think it was funny. Jude was affected by this heat cream thing, and he just let his friends eat it. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and have a lovely day.